one of our taglines is redefine success on her own terms. The world has conditioned us to be a certain way and act a certain way and do that next thing. So to break away from that mold of expectation is the first thing that I had to go through. Everybody expects me to do this, but I'm going to do this because I have to do this. When else am I going to do it? If you have that struggle, that's number one, identifying it.
Mm.
And then you have to go through the process. Well, what is that other thing?
Welcome back to the show. Hope you're all having a great week so far. I am so excited to be talking in this episode about one of my favorite social platforms, and honestly, the one I use the most, which is LinkedIn. If you're not familiar with LinkedIn, it's known as a business networking platform, and it's really evolved over the years. And I remember joining it back in probably 2006, 2007. And the platform has really just done such amazing things for people in terms of finding jobs, finding connections, networking, building their business, all of these really cool things. So on today's episode of the show, I have Erica Lockheimer on. Erica is the founder and CEO of HumanizeHer, which we talk about, but she also spent 13 years at LinkedIn. She was a VP of engineering, and she was the founder of Women in Tech at LinkedIn. And she really has had this amazing and prominent career over the course of the last 30 years in tech. And what I loved about my conversation with Erica is we talk about the early days of LinkedIn, which as I just mentioned, love the platform. So loved learning a little bit more about LinkedIn and how it started and how it's grown. And then we talk about what it's like to be a woman in tech as an engineer and what that journey was like for Erica. And then to today, where she's the founder and CEO of HumanizeHer. And she has been building this amazing platform that is aimed at cultivating a world where every woman can thrive and shatter the glass ceilings and really redefine what success means to her on her own terms. So I really loved this conversation with Erica. There's a lot of really interesting insights in here. So with that, I'm going to let you hear my conversation with Erica Lockheimer. Here we go. Erica, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I'm so excited. So excited.
Yeah, I am too. Well, first of all, you worked on a platform, one of the social platforms, and I consider it a social platform, right? LinkedIn.
Absolutely.
It's the platform I am the most active on and always have been. It's a platform I understand, I guess, the best, just because I think everyone has the platform that they kind of naturally gravitate towards. And for me, it's always been LinkedIn. When did you start at LinkedIn? Let's start with that. And how long were you there?
It's a great question, and I'm glad it's the platform of choice for you. And I think I understand it the most as well, probably because I helped build it. I was there for 13 and a half years, which
was that the beginning?
Yeah. So it was 2010 when I started, and I was there when we had less than 150 million members on the platform. LinkedIn has now over 1 billion members on the platform. It's insane. And when I joined, I was asked to lead the growth team. And to be honest, I was more from the camp before that. I'm an engineer by trade. So I was working behind the server, in the server room, behind the server wall. I just like making sure systems would work on the back end. I had never thought about doing social platform at all. And you're right, it is a social platform. It's where it was like the time of if you could be there, and you had Facebook, you had all these things that were coming up, and they're like, hey, can you lead the growth team? I honestly stepped into a role that I didn't really know how to do, but I remember hitting every single milestone. We'd hit 150 million members, 200 million members, 300. We would just go crazy. It was all about growth. So I was in charge of the registration flow, the emails that you would get, push notifications, all the growth strategies. I was responsible for that. And then we got smarter about quality growth as well. So
It sounds a lot like, so I spent the first part of my career at American Express doing credit card marketing, all the different kinds of credit card marketing stuff that there was to do there. And one of the marketing teams was acquisition and engagement, like a new member engagement.
that's
And
right.
it sounds like a lot of the things you're talking about with the registration, the email, the push notifications, those are all things you do early in, as soon as someone almost becomes a member,
Yep.
so that they have a path to understanding the value of what this platform, and for me it was the credit card, but in your case it was the platform, was going to do for them. What would you say is some, like, the way that you think about LinkedIn, and how maybe professionals and other people should think about LinkedIn?
Yeah, it's a great question, and just to respond to your experience as well, you're right. Like retention, acquisition, all of that was critical. And once you get someone on the platform, the worst thing that you can actually do is you get them on the platform and they have no one they're connected to, right? So that's why importing your address book, all those types of things, and connecting to the people that you know, so that you're there, and then you have a great experience. And so when you think about what LinkedIn, it definitely has evolved over time, and I've had many jobs at LinkedIn. So I've also led their learning business when we acquired Linda. I also led their LinkedIn talent business, which is recruiter on the platform and jobs on the platform. So if you think about the evolution of LinkedIn, it was at first just your professional identity online. That is number one thing that I think honestly everybody should do. So even as a student, and I think that's what's challenging is when I speak to students, I speak to them a lot, and they're like, "Well, I don't have a job. I don't have job experience." But you got to start somewhere, and you also have projects you worked on and such. So you need to showcase yourself. It's your professional identity. And if you think about, if you do a Google search, someone searches for your name, they're like, "Who's this person that I got an email from?" The first thing you do is you're gonna search for that person, and you'll find them because SEO is a great solution for LinkedIn. So number one, be there. And then number two, depending on what your needs are, like some people they want to look for a job. Well, guess what? They have so many jobs on LinkedIn across multiple industries. That is going to be your first place to, number one, look for one. Number two, apply. They make the process very seamless. And then also there's a recruiter platform. That recruiter platform does search and algorithms to do matching of skills to find someone, a match really for that job that they have posted and that person that's online. So if you're not there, guess what? You're never going to have an opportunity. So depending, if you're looking for a job, definitely be there. If you're in the recruiting space, definitely be there. And then also the other part is learning. There's LinkedIn Learning on there. You can learn about different topics on the professional, and the tech side. I mean, the vast majority that they have is on content is pretty high. And then the other part is networking. I will tell you, I was at LinkedIn for 13 and a half years. I wasn't looking for jobs. I wasn't using that product, but I've never used LinkedIn more than now in my life when I'm not there. Because
Interesting.
yeah, I'm able to reach out to people because I have a podcast as well. So I need to recruit. I'm in sales. Guess what? I want different people that I don't know outside my network. I got to reach out to them. It's the platform of
Mm.
choice to actually reach someone.
I'll just tell you about my perspective on LinkedIn versus the other social platforms. And as a company, our company, She Speaks, we work on the other social platforms much more so than, let's say, we work on LinkedIn, because we're working with social media influencers. But I think from the perspective of reliability, I feel like the other platforms, there are a lot more bogus accounts, so to speak, in the
Mm.
sense that someone's representing themselves and you don't really know if that's actually who they are. I feel like on LinkedIn, there is a lot more checks and balances
Yeah.
for that in some ways. I find it more reliable when I'm looking up somebody on LinkedIn versus the other platforms.
You're absolutely right. When I was working there was some countries that would actually use the identity on LinkedIn as a proven thing because it's
Interesting.
like a number one trusted site. So you're absolutely right. Your opinion is massive across the world. I liked your perspective that you brought up the differences between like Instagram, depending on who the person is. I'm like, they are amazing on Instagram, not on LinkedIn. And then you see that opposite. It's so playing. It's like, oh, I'm going to post this, and it's not going to go well for this person here on LinkedIn, but
Yeah.
it's on Instagram. So I'm learning that as well. Of
Mhm.
everybody has their platform of choice, especially on the creative side. I see a lot of that, like you said, on influencers on Instagram and TikTok.
I definitely see more influencers just in the space that we're in. We work with, social media influencers who are probably big. Their following is mostly on, let's say, a TikTok and
Mhm.
an Instagram, because what we're working on is B2C, so business to consumer products. So think your Coca-Colas of the world and your Mars Wrigley's. Those are the types of products we're working on. So usually we're trying to reach people who are everyday
Right.
consumers. But what's really interesting that we're finding is a lot of those influencers are realizing that they have huge opportunity if they can build their reputation and some thought leadership even on LinkedIn for finding clients,
Yep. Yep.
finding
Absolutely.
partnerships, because that's how influencers make a big chunk of their money, is through partnerships and sponsorship dollars. So I'm definitely seeing a lot of those
Yeah.
social media influencers migrating probably in the last year and a half, 2 years to LinkedIn.
Like Reese Witherspoon, she just joined LinkedIn. Snoop Dogg's there. I mean, it's been kind of a crazy fun ride to see. So absolutely,
Yeah.
it's been great.
Well, what an amazing opportunity to be there to see that it, like, sort of hockey stick growth that the platform had. Let's talk a little bit about your engineering background, because I love coming across women that have this type of background. One of my daughters is very much, this is like the way she thinks.
Right.
And it's really interesting to me to see how successful women who have that background can be in non-technical environments. Like, go on to become chief marketing officers,
Yeah.
go on to become successful entrepreneurs, and like not just in the technology realm. Let's talk a little bit about engineering for women. How is the field evolving for women? I know there's been a lot more conversation to try to make STEM more inviting for young women so that that becomes a field that they want to go into. What was your draw to engineering, and how do you think it sets you up for success?
Yeah. So fabulous question. And when I got involved in engineering, I was really good at math. And it was a math teacher in high school that said, hey, why don't you try this programming class called Pascal, if anybody still knows what that is. Okay, good. You do. So I remember being in that classroom, and it was just an amazing experience to have this computer. You could do inputs and it would have outputs. I mean, I it was a revolutionary game, tic tac toe, that I programmed, but I created it. And it just that feeling of innovation and creation, I was hooked. I was honestly hooked. And I was like, okay, maybe this is something I wanted to do. But then you quickly look around the classroom and then you realize you're the only one, right? And then I also I was like a cheerleader. I was like, just everything did not compute of, the stereotype of what an engineer should look like, or, they would call us nerds at the time, right? So I love being called a nerd. I am a total big geek and I love it. But
Yeah.
it's
Wear it as a badge of honor.
I know, it is. And so I actually stepped out of it and I didn't know what to do. So I basically went to junior college. I was the first person in my family to graduate from college, but I walked the halls of San Jose State after 2 years in junior college and I saw this plaque of women and society engineers. And that's honestly how I chose my major. It was another sense of belonging, of like, oh, maybe I could be like her. And I always wanted to go to those grassroots of an engineer. My dad was always wanting to be an engineer as well. And then I majored in computer engineering. But again, I got there and the classrooms were again not like people like me. So it took me 7 years to graduate. I did. I was working 30 hours a week. And I had my one girlfriend that was there. We're still friends today because it's slim pickings, right? We're the only two in the classroom. But I completed my studies and I was so proud, but I just realized every stage, then I get to the workforce and it's again the same thing. I was just it was just a lot of this stuff that I'm focused on now is really born out of frustration and just not feeling that sense of like, oh, I fit in even though I want to do this. So that's why I started Women in Tech at LinkedIn in the early days, because when I joined there, we were less than, there was like maybe two or three of us women in the field. And so it's always just been kind of in my blood and my DNA. It should be a better feeling. And we need more women in this field. The global population, guess what? Half of it are women. So if you're going to
Mhm.
build and create, you better have them at the table. You better have them in the algorithms. And then with AI, if those biases are in the systems, it's going to take forever to like undo all of that work. So I think it's so, so critical to have diverse people at the table building products. And I've seen this, and it's not just saying it, right? I've seen it. I give you an explicit example. When I worked at LinkedIn, worked on the recruiter product, right? If you're going to search for, I want to find an engineer, I want to hire for this job, we, how you decide to display those results on the first page, say you have 60% women, 60% men, because those are just what the odds are, and 40% women, that first page that you render on those search results, guess what? It better be that representation, because that's
Mhm.
also how you're deciding, I'm going to go out, I'm going to have that person apply for the job, right? So
Mhm.
you have to pay attention to those algorithms, the data that you have, the missing data, missing data that you have in order to get the right results. So it's everywhere. You just got to start paying attention to it and make sure that's there. But I feel even with, I mean, I can go on and on. I'm going to pause, but because I have a lot of examples, like even with sexual harassment and women on the platform. I remember early days, like I would show them, like, are you guys getting this? They're like, I don't get any of that. It's like, okay, we need to work on some of this stuff in the platform,
Yeah.
because there's use cases that we have that other people don't have, and we
Mhm.
just have to look at the world and with a different lens, and we have a different perspective and we can
Yeah.
differently.
Well, you mentioned AI, artificial intelligence, and that how do we ensure that just from the start that there's not bias in the system? And as it relates to gender. Can you talk a little bit just so people understand? Because let's say, someone who's listening to this understand they're hearing a lot about AI. They're not sure how it impacts what they do. But can you talk a little bit more about what you meant when you said this, like there could be some introduction of bias in the system as it relates to women? Just give us a practical example so people can understand what that means and why it would have a negative impact.
Right. So I'll go back to the example. Maybe I wasn't as clear, but if you think about, I mean, AI isn't really not like new, right? We've had these algorithms like for years. It's just more that now AI is more accessible
Mhm.
to folks like ChatGPT or Gemini for Google. I use it every day, which is fantastic. But if you think about what AI is, right? It's basically you have data, right? So you're only as good as your data, and then you build algorithms on that data, and then you get output based on prompts and such like that. So if you think about the use case that I brought before, where it's like, I'm going to search for a software engineer,
Mhm.
right? So then if I'm going to search for a software engineer, what data do I have? Well, but guess
Mhm.
what? I better have diverse data on the platform, right?
Mhm.
So am I going to have the right representation of people on the platform? Or think about how I'm even getting you to sign up for LinkedIn or me. How, what represents those individuals? How are we going after those individuals to get them on the platform in the first place? So are they there? And then look at, I think also saying people are sometimes like, oh, I don't want to say what my gender is or whatever, but that also helps all these algorithms to make sure that you have representation. Like, what else? What if you're also getting these results and you're like, wow, all my results are men, but that's not true, right? It's like,
Mhm.
no. So you need some identity, self identity in some of these algorithms, which is hard to get. So sometimes you do things like by name, which is
Mhm.
hard, and you'll do misses, but you kind of have to still like do the inventory of the data that you have. Does it represent the world and what you're
Mhm.
trying to accomplish? And then you create algorithms on it. If you're not paying attention to what those data sources are and you just blindly create algorithms,
Yep.
output is going to be shit. Sorry.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
going to garbage in, garbage out. So
100%.
everybody has their different use case. So you need to understand who you're building for, what you're building, what
Mhm.
that data is to get the right outputs.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you need the
Well,
human. You need the human element in it. You can't just let these AI algorithms go rogue. It's not going to work.
Right. Right. Well, and well, that's hopefully reassuring for people listening because it's the human touch that kind of helps shape it and form it and direct it.
Absolutely.
But if you were thinking about so you were at LinkedIn,
Hmm.
you started Women in Tech at LinkedIn, which you talked about and understand why, but you recently, relatively recently, left LinkedIn to start Humanize Her. Can you talk about what Humanize Her is and why did you leave this amazing place that you had, spent years in and obviously been part of the growth to take the leap into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I am still honestly having an identity crisis. I'll be honest. This is I've been in tech for nearly 30 years. I mean, I've never took a break in my career. I had 2 kids, 6 weeks max. I was just trained to that is my path. And it's interesting. Many things happen of like the why, and I'm still processing the why. I'll be honest, but I went a lot on feelings of how I evolved as a human and the things that were bringing so much joy to my life. I loved leading. I was leading a team of over 1,000 people and 9.5 billion revenue of LinkedIn. It was like a huge ass job. It's a job I cried for, I fought for, I wanted so bad. And I had for many, many years just climbing that corporate ladder. And then all of a sudden I'm like, why am I not happy anymore? It's like, I don't know, like what happened, Erica? But many things happened in my life around that time, and I'll be transparent. I'm not going to share all my family drama, but there's some stuff that happened in my family, and there's when you go through, we all go through stuff, right? And so
Absolutely.
when that happens, that kind of gives you a perspective, like, okay, I was craving more time to have more control about when I did things, how I did things, and so that became a part of it.
Mhm,
And then my kids are 16 and 18. I'll never get those years back. And I just
mhm,
wanted a little bit more connection time and I felt they needed it. Then the second thing I had a health scare. I had cancer smacked in the middle of my face. I looked like Frankenstein and there's nothing like that makes you wake up and like, okay, your mortality is possibility here. And then also getting to 50, that mid life perspective. And so putting that all together, I'm like, I'm going to take a break. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. And that was the scariest thing. It's not how my dad raised me or my parents. You quit a job, you get another job, like you're making a whole bunch of money at this company. Like, why? But I wanted to just go with these feelings. And so I just quit and I said, I'm going to take a break. And I didn't know what it meant, but that only lasted like 3 months. But I traveled, I did a lot of trips with family and friends and girlfriends. And then I was on a run. And one of the things that I realized that I missed the most was how I had built a community for women at LinkedIn and outside of LinkedIn. And so many women were still coming to me like, Erica, help me manage this next phase. And then I started meeting other women like entrepreneurs. And I always thought this loneliness of women in tech is just that's how I was conditioned for so many years. Like this problem is everywhere. It's in sports, it's in entrepreneurship, it's like everywhere. And just gosh, can we all come together and maybe uh, build a community, share these stories, a lot of what you're doing, which is, amazing. And I just was on a run and I just said, you know what, I'm going to create a community. I'll just create my own. I don't know what it is. And when I was in product meetings at LinkedIn, we'd go through all these product specs and they'd talk about what this feature is. And I would always say, can you humanize it for me for a second? And then when I was on a run, I was like, humanize her. So literally that's how it came. And so I said, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to build a podcast because we can't be our best kept secrets and we
mhm,
need a platform to share our stories. It's
mhm,
also, I've been using it honestly. I feel like some of these sessions have been therapy for me where I'm learning from all these
mhm,
incredible women that I've never met before across all industries. And they're going through things that are similar, but then also they've figured it out in some ways, and so I'm enjoying their stories, and then I'm also, like, buy from them, support them, invest in them, elevate their voices, like, a simple thing, I was like, "I need some art on the back of my podcast." This woman I found from Dubai, that it's all custom art from her, and she just decided to leave tech and focus on her art, so I'm like, all these collabs that we can do, and we're so much stronger together, it just feels good right now, and
mhm,
so I have a crew, my whole crew is I'm not gonna half-ass anything, I'm an engineer by trade, so I probably spent a shit ton of money on all my cameras and equipment and the team, but they're all from LinkedIn. They created LinkedIn Learning videos, still there, and
Mm,
having a good time, and we're building and I'm elevating women's voices, and it feels good work. I feel like this is my purpose, but to be
mm,
honest, how do I make it a business? That's another thing. I wanna prove that that can be possible
mm,
too, but
mhm,
I'm figuring it out. I'm just kind of following how I feel right now, and it feels like I'm helping, and I'm
mm.
helping women, be more successful, and it feels fantastic. And if I influence one, that feels great. So,
I love that. Well, so many of those things resonate, I think, probably with the people listening to this. I think that there is, first of all, there is something that like, I don't know what another word, but magical. There's something magical that happens when women come together. And I don't think there is, I think there's so many reasons why. You can go into like, what's all the rationale? I mean, my last name is Freud, so I love psychoanalyzing things, but there's something about, I think, how women, we are earnest and want to help. And so when you get a group of women together, our orientation is to help and to be of service and to be in service to others. And that is not a small thing. And in thinking about how important that is for each of us in how we live our lives, it is not a small thing. And I think that there is something that, as women, and I can't speak for men because I am not nearly as expert in the men's space as I am in the women's space, just doing what I've done for as long as I have. I do think that there is something about how women are built that we need to feel like we are being in service in some ways to others, that it's not just all about me. It's about how can I help other people? So it is so not surprising to me that you built this career for yourself, you've achieved those things, and then you looked at it and you thought, well, what's the next step? What's the next thing for me? Because what I've done before is not necessarily the thing that's going to serve me and that I can be helpful in moving forward. And I think a lot of women go through that. And the question just is, you know, do you listen to that voice in your head? You listen to that little thing that you have going on that's maybe like kind of marinating in the back of your mind for a
mhm,
while. For me personally, it took me like 3 years to ultimately listen to that voice because I was at a big company and knew that I wanted to do something different, but it took me a while to figure out what it was. And the other thing that you said that I also want to highlight, and it made me think that when I was going through the process
mhm,
of, what do I want to do? What's it going to be? I know there's more I can do, but I don't know what it is. There's this thing that kept coming into my head, this phrase of master of my own destiny
yeah,
that was just, it was there and I could not ignore it. And then there's a process. And this is what I'm going to get to the question because I'm so fascinated when women share the kinds of story that you're sharing. What was it? Did you have a process? Do you have anything you can recommend to our listeners who maybe are at a similar point in their life where they're like, what I've been doing up until this point it served me for a lot of years, but now I feel like this sort of discomfort and I know there's more. I know there's something else. But getting to, okay, what is that thing? Do you
yeah.
have any advice or from what you went through that you can share? Was it running? You said you ran. Is it like exercise? Is it journaling? Like, what is are any tips for people who are listening and maybe can learn from what you did?
Yeah, it's a great question, and thank you for sharing your journey. I could probably listen to you and about so many things to learn as well. I It was the scariest thing that I've ever done, right? Because everybody, you being in a corporate job as well, everybody expected you to do this other thing, but you you go through that process and you're like, one of our taglines is redefine success on her own terms, right? So I think the world has conditioned us to be a certain way and act a certain way and do that next thing. So to break away from that mold of expectation is the first thing that I had to go through in my head. Everybody expects me to do this, but I'm going to do this because I have to do this. When else am I going to do it? So that if you have that urge and you're fighting and you have that struggle like you had to even describe and it took you 3 years and I'm still going through it. I'm like, "Oh, did I make the right mistake? Did I make the right move?" And, you're still questioning yourself. So I think if you have that struggle, that's number 1, identifying it.
Mm.
And then you have to go through the process. Well, okay, well, what is that other thing? And I'll be honest, I went crazy. So, like, it's kind of like software. I honestly have been A/B testing myself. I've been in real estate for some investment properties, and I thought, oh, maybe I'll just do that full time. Maybe, and we built this ADU that I'm in right now. And I was like, oh, and I'm going to work with the contractors. I'm going to do all this stuff. Maybe I'll become like, there's not many women in contracting. And so that's what I'm going to do. Like, I was thinking that's what I was going to do.
Mhm.
And I built this thing with the contractor. And guess what? Now it turned into a studio. I had no idea that it was going to be this. But sometimes you just have to play through stuff. And then I realized, no, that doesn't bring me joy. So again, go back to A/B testing stuff. I had to do exploration. I did so many talks. Also, I go, maybe I need to be a public speaker and maybe that's what I need to do. And so I spoke at Google, I spoke at Handshake, I was going through all these, maybe that's what I should do. And I enjoyed that, but it just wasn't enough for me. So I was like, that's not enough. So I think just going through those emotions and I did a lot of exercising, did a lot of mentor talks. All of a sudden I would be posting on my LinkedIn, maybe you could see maybe a year ago, walked with this person, learned this, and
Yeah.
realize everybody else is going through this stuff. So I think you have to figure out that struggle, identify it, A/B test some things, and then when you just kind of feel like the podcast was one thing that I got a whole bunch of amazing. You go back to the community aspect of women liking to help women. I got 5 amazing people, and I said, "What do you think?" They were
Mhm.
sitting in this room with like nothing on the wall that are my advisors and friends and they're like, "You should totally do this. This is you. This is you."
Mm.
People that know you in a different way, and then they also give you that light to
Mm.
say, "Go for it." And sometimes you just need that. So I think surround yourself with your believers,
Mhm.
and then you just do. Like
Yeah.
I'm just doing right now, and I'm learning.
Yeah.
I only released 10 episodes, and I've created I think 27, and we release every 2 weeks. And I'm the engineer, I'm the deployment, I'm the all the things and marketing, sales, all of it. And you just do. And I'm living through it, but I've never worked harder, never enjoyed as much as my work as much as I have now in this new phase of my life. And I have the flexibility to go pick up my daughter from school, drop her
Mm.
off, do all those things,
Mm.
go on a trip with my son to an ride. Like, so it checks all those other boxes of like my why.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing right now.
Yeah. I love that. Well, if you spend a lot of time encouraging women to dream bigger, what is your next big dream for Humanize Her?
I feel like I'm doing it right now. We are gonna be going to South by Southwest in about, a week. We're nervous. We're bringing the whole crew, 10 of us. And what's great when we record is we basically have a slumber party. They all sleep here for like a week and we record like 9 at a time. It's insane. So we're going to South by. My sister's coming, my advisors, the people on the team. So I want to be successful and it's going to be live for the first time. As you know, live is a little bit different than recorded and editing and publishing and doing all that. So a bit nervous. And then after that, I want to see if we can have bigger reach. And I really want to get the community aspect behind the podcast. So I did do one event launch party and had about 200 people here. And it was super fun just to see a room full of women just wanting to support each other. So I want to bring them together, promote their businesses, have kind of like a mini trade show type of thing, and plan on doing that again. Maybe you'll be around. I'd love to have you. So
I mean, I love this idea. And let me just tell you, as someone who has been involved in seeing a lot of other, women starting businesses, building businesses, you have the right approach because you're not saying this is 100% how it has to be. And this is Like it's, if it doesn't go this way, then it's not going to go anyway. It's this explore and learn approach where you're recognizing that you're going to find the value as you go. And you have the kernel of, what the value is ultimately, but then it's how do you create structure around that? How do you create scale around it? How do you create monetization around it? Those are all the things that come as you explore and as you do it. So I am so excited for you, Erica. If people want to follow you and the journey of Humanize Her, what is the best way for them to do that?
Well, since we put so much time and effort into a video podcast, so YouTube would be the platform of choice, but we're on Spotify, Apple. Obviously, go to humanizeher.com and you can find all, the places where to go. But yeah, that's where we're at. We're on all your shorts on Instagram and LinkedIn and TikTok everywhere, but we're growing, we're starting, we're new. So I appreciate it. The
Awesome. Well,
support.
thank you so much for spending the time with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you're an influencer or a brand that wants to work with us, please feel free to email us at info@shespeaks.com. Until next time.